Welcome to Shatter.
Support the channel by liking, commenting, and subscribing. I promise even more interesting stories. She smiled at him like I didn't exist. That was the exact second everything inside me turned to stone. We were at her company's rooftop party, string lights overhead, jazz playing low, wine glasses clinking. I'd shown up 40 minutes late on purpose. I wanted to see how she acted when she didn't think I was watching. And there she was, across the terrace, leaning in too close to some guy in a navy blazer, hand brushing his arm like they had history. That smile, not friendly, not casual, intimate, familiar, like I'd never been in the picture. People talk about betrayal like it's fire, but this was ice. A numb, sinking freeze that hit behind my ribs. She had no idea I was watching. No idea that his hand was about to cost her everything. But that wasn't the worst part. The worst part was who walked in beside me, his wife. I hadn't even planned it. I met her 3 nights ago, completely by accident, when I borrowed her husband's name to get a reservation at a restaurant I wasn't supposed to be at. She laughed when I told her, then froze when I said his full name. "You know Ethan?" she'd asked, too calmly. "Yeah," I said. "Unfortunately. Turns out the universe likes symmetry." So we walked in together, me in a black button-down, her in a dress too elegant for this crowd. Both of us calm, unreadable. I didn't have to say a word. Just stepped forward. Watched the color drain from my wife's face like someone had yanked the plug. Ethan tried to play it cool, straightened his collar, glanced between us like maybe this could still be salvaged. It couldn't. I didn't cause a scene. Didn't scream. Didn't confront her. I didn't even look at her directly. I walked past her like she was a stranger. Because that's what she was now. His wife stopped, slow and deliberate, just long enough to whisper something in his ear. His face cracked. I saw the mask slip. Panic behind the smile. She walked off. I followed. No rage. No chaos. Just precision. That night, I didn't go home. Because home didn't exist anymore. She texted me an hour later. "We need to talk." I didn't respond. I was done talking. Now, I was planning. And the first move was silence. Let her sit with it. Let her wonder where I was, who I was with. Let her remember that smile, the one she gave him, and wonder how many people saw it. That was the beginning of the end. Not hers. Mine. Because I wasn't falling apart. I was waking up. And when I came back, I wouldn't be the man she left behind. I didn't disappear. I just stopped showing up where she expected me. No confrontation. No explanation. Just absence. A quiet, calculated withdrawal that didn't make noise, but left a vacuum. The next morning, I left early. Too early for her to wake up and catch me. No note. No coffee brewed. No predictable habits to trace. I drove nowhere in particular, just watched the city wake up from behind the windshield. I needed space, not from her, but from the version of myself I had become around her. By the time she texted, "Where are you?" I was already hours into my new routine. A gym I hadn't visited in 2 years. A breakfast spot I used to love before our relationship turned everything into compromise. I didn't answer. She tried again. "You didn't come home last night." Still nothing. This wasn't revenge. It was revelation. A quiet unhooking from the emotional leash she thought she held. I went to work like nothing happened. Said good morning to people I normally passed by. Laughed at a joke I actually found funny. Ate lunch alone on purpose, phone face down. Because now I was protecting my energy like it was mine again. Later that evening, I pulled into the driveway. Her car was there, but the lights inside were off. I took my time walking in. No rush. No anticipation. She was on the couch, still in her work clothes, pretending to watch TV. When she saw me, she straightened. Her voice was tight, controlled. "Where were you?" I didn't flinch. Just hung my keys on the hook and said, "Out." She waited for more. It didn't come. For the first time in years, I saw a crack in her confidence. She blinked, like she didn't recognize the man in front of her. I didn't sit beside her. I didn't ask about her day. I walked straight upstairs, closed the door, and exhaled like I hadn't in months. This wasn't about avoiding conflict. It was about ending a dynamic. She had built a system, one where affection was earned, silence was punishment, and I was supposed to beg for scraps. But when I stopped playing, the system broke. Over the next 3 days, I made no moves. No arguments. No plans. I was polite. I was distant. I was steady. And that scared her more than any explosion ever could. She started testing the waters, asking if I wanted to join her for dinner, wearing perfume she hadn't touched in 6 months, laughing a little too hard at nothing. I nodded. I smiled. But I didn't return, because I wasn't angry anymore. I was done, and she could feel it, not in my words, but in the silence she couldn't control. It started with small subtractions, not dramatic ones, quiet cuts. I stopped leaving my gym bag by the door, stopped using our shared bathroom in the mornings, moved half my wardrobe to the guest room without saying a word. She noticed. Of course she did. But she didn't ask. She didn't dare. She was waiting for the old me, the fixer, the one who folded in every time she pouted. But that man had left the room, and the one who replaced him didn't chase silence anymore. He handed it back. She kept trying. One night, she walked into our bedroom in a black dress I hadn't seen in a year. No words, just perfume, candlelight, and a glass of red wine she set quietly on the nightstand. She slid under the covers without turning off the light. I didn't move. I stayed sitting in the armchair by the window, book in hand, fully dressed. I didn't look at her. I didn't comment on the dress. I didn't give her what she was testing for. And after a few minutes, I heard the click of the lamp. Darkness. Defeat. She thought intimacy was a switch. She forgot I'd already pulled the plug. That week, I went deeper. Closed down the joint savings account. Not as punishment, as preparation. She hadn't contributed to it in months anyway. I reallocated our investments into a trust with my name on it. Updated my emergency contacts. Removed her from my insurance. Every move was legal, quiet, irrevocable. She began to sense it. Not through confrontation, but absence. She came home to find the hallway photos missing. Not all of them, just the ones with us in them. The others, landscapes, family, the dog, still hung untouched. The message was clear. She was being erased with precision, not rage. That night, she stood in the doorway of the guest room, watched me folding clothes into a suitcase. "You're leaving?" she asked, barely above a whisper. I didn't pause, just sorting things. She stood there, unsure whether to cry, shout, or pretend this wasn't happening. But I gave her nothing, not even a glance, because I wasn't playing defense. I was building distance, not to hurt her, to liberate myself. She had turned me into a man who apologized for needing connection, for asking to be seen, for showing up. But now I showed up only for myself. And the scariest part for her wasn't losing control. It was realizing I had already taken mine back. Quietly, efficiently, without asking permission. This wasn't detachment. It was freedom, dressed in silence. I didn't leave the house. I just stopped making it feel like home. Every day, I took something with me. Not furniture, not clothes. Presence, intention, energy. I made my absence heavier than my footsteps had ever been. The first crack showed up at dinner. She made pasta from scratch, set the table for two, lit a candle, something we hadn't done in almost a year. There was music playing, something soft and jazzy, like she was trying to rewind time. I came in from the garage, still in my hoodie and gym bag over one shoulder. I didn't comment on the setup. I didn't even ask why she suddenly remembered how to cook. I sat down, ate in silence, and left the table before she could ask if I liked it. She was chasing the version of me who once begged for crumbs. But that version no longer existed. Later that night, she stood in the hallway, arms crossed, like she wanted to say something but didn't know where to begin. I didn't help her find the words. I just walked past. And that silence? It was louder than any fight we ever had. But it didn't stop there. I started taking back social space, too. Friends she liked to keep close, the ones who only knew my name as an afterthought, suddenly started reaching out to me. Not to her. They'd say things like, "You doing okay?" Or, "Didn't expect to see you out, man. You look good." Because I was showing up again. Not as a husband. Not as a half-man orbiting someone else's ego. As myself. And the more I stood up straighter, the more she started to shrink. At a mutual friend's birthday, I showed up alone. She walked in 20 minutes later, clearly not expecting me to be there. She wore a smile like armor, but her eyes scanned the room the moment she noticed I was already mid-conversation, laughing, relaxed. She hovered, then approached. I nodded politely. Nothing more. Later that evening, someone whispered near her, too close to me not to hear. "Did they break up? He looks free." She heard it. I saw it land. And in that moment, she realized this wasn't temporary. This wasn't a phase or a mood swing. This was the beginning of a new reality. One where I wasn't chasing her. One where I didn't explain myself. Because the man who used to be hers had stopped waiting to be chosen. He had already left the room. And this version? He didn't ask for space. He took it. I didn't take the house. I just removed myself from its memory. She still lived there. Technically. Same kitchen. Same bedroom. Same view from the upstairs window. But everything she touched felt unfamiliar now. Because I made sure of it. I changed the scent of the place. New detergent, new soap, new cologne. Subtle things. But when she walked into the bedroom and it no longer smelled like us, only like me, her face twitched. She didn't know how to name the shift. But she could feel it. The couch we used to sit on. I replaced the cushions. The old framed photos from our trips. Gone. Not smashed. Not hidden. Just replaced with images that didn't include her. She asked about them once, casually, like it didn't sting. I said I was simplifying. What I didn't say, I was cleaning her out of my history. But what really shook her came 2 weeks later. She walked in from work, heels clicking down the hallway, voice calling out like she expected dinner or conversation or even an argument. Silence. I wasn't there. Not a note. Not a message. But I hadn't left town. I was just elsewhere. Living. Quietly. She called me. I let it ring. I knew what she was feeling. That breathless confusion. The same one I felt the night I saw her smile at another man like I didn't exist. Only now, she was the one staring at empty space, wondering if the person she thought was hers had already left for good. The next morning, I showed up at breakfast. Calm. Tired, but satisfied. I made eggs. Ate in silence. She stared at me, waiting for an explanation. I didn't offer one. Because now the roles had reversed. She was the one clinging to rituals. I was the one rewriting the rules. Later that day, I redirected the utilities. Took her off the account. Switched the mailing address for the insurance. When she got the notification, she stormed into my office. "What is this?" she asked. I looked up from my screen. Ownership. One word. That's all it took. She didn't yell. Because she knew if she did, she'd prove just how badly she wanted to stay in control. But control wasn't hers anymore. It wasn't mine either. It belonged to the version of me who no longer answered to her patterns. I didn't change the locks. Because she was already locked out. Not of the house. Of my life. She came into the room wearing the robe I bought her last Christmas. The one she never wore. Back then, she called it too intimate. Now, suddenly, it was her uniform. She hovered in the doorway for effect, like she thought presence alone was enough to pull me back into orbit. But I didn't even look up from the book in my lap. She leaned against the doorframe, one leg crossed over the other, pretending she was relaxed. But her fingers kept twisting the fabric belt like a tell. She cleared her throat. I turned a page. Nothing more. It was obvious now. She didn't want me back. She wanted back the version of herself that felt wanted. That version didn't exist anymore. She moved across the room slowly, trying to make it look effortless. Sat at the edge of the bed, close but not touching. She reached for my arm. I shifted slightly, not violently, just enough. Enough to make it clear. The answer was no. She laughed, but there was no humor in it. Said something about how distant I'd been. I responded with silence. Because what could I say that hadn't already been lived? She whispered, "We could still fix this." But there was nothing left broken. Just ruins. And I had already salvaged everything worth saving me. She stayed there a while, hoping I'd fold. That I'd let the past play one more trick on my discipline. But I didn't. Eventually, she got up. No drama. No door slam. Just a robe brushing quietly against cold floors. And then the soft shut of the bedroom across the hall. Separate rooms. A detail that would become permanent. The next day, she left early for work. No breakfast. No words. Not even a glance. But I knew what she was doing, pulling back to see if I'd chase. I didn't. Instead, I started the process of removing her name from our mortgage. It wasn't easy. It wasn't fast. But it was possible. She hadn't contributed in nearly a year. The bank saw the pattern. They saw my discipline. All I had to do was prove she'd already left in every way except physically. And that part, she was making easier every day. What she didn't realize was this. You don't lose someone all at once. You lose them in quiet refusals. In withheld glances. In rooms that stop waiting for your presence to mean something. That night, I slept deeper than I had in months. Not because I was at peace, but because I no longer needed hers. I didn't hate her. I just didn't need her in the room anymore, even if she was still standing in it. 2 weeks passed. 2 weeks of her pretending we were slowly healing, just going through something. She didn't realize the healing had already happened, just not the way she imagined. I wasn't recovering. I was reconfiguring. She started reaching out to people, mutual friends, her sister, trying to rewrite the narrative before I had a chance to tell my side. But I wasn't telling any side. I was letting silence speak. And silence, when handled right, can turn allies into witnesses. Then came the moment she thought would give her the upper hand. She went to her lover's wife. I didn't find out from her. I found out from the woman herself, Olivia. The same woman who walked into that rooftop party next to me like she was born to carry a secret too heavy to speak. We'd stayed in touch, not often, just enough. There was something respectful between us. Not romantic, just aligned. Olivia called me that morning. Calm voice, measured tone. She came to my office, she said. And I knew who she meant before she said her name. She told me you were manipulative, that you used her affair to punish her, that you were cold, controlling, emotionally unavailable. I didn't interrupt. I let her finish. Then she said something that stopped the clock in my head. But you already told me everything, weeks ago. Quietly, without trying to sway me. And that's how I knew she was lying. I didn't respond right away. Because what do you say when someone hands you back your dignity without asking for it? She continued, I just thought you should know. She's unraveling. Be ready. I was. That night, my wife came home early. Too early. Hair done. Makeup just a little too perfect for someone who'd claimed to work late. She was baiting another scene. Hoping I'd snap, accuse, demand. But I didn't give her that. I greeted her with the same stillness that had driven her insane for weeks. She hovered in the kitchen, opening drawers, slamming one just a little too loud, looking for a fight that didn't exist. Eventually, she broke the silence. I spoke to Olivia. I nodded. That's it. She stared at me, waiting for something. Anger, shame, begging, anything. But I gave her exactly what she'd given me the night she smiled at another man like I wasn't there. Indifference. The kind that doesn't scream. The kind that doesn't flinch. Just the kind that confirms. I had already left the moment she thought I was still standing there. And now? She wasn't looking at her husband. She was looking at a version of him she didn't recognize. And never would again. She tried using words. The same voice that once melted me down to nothing. Soft, shaky, almost sincere. But words from her had lost weight. Because truth doesn't sound the same when it comes after the silence. She stood in the hallway that night, arms loose at her sides, voice just above a whisper. I made mistakes. I didn't look up, just folded the last shirt into the suitcase. She tried again. I didn't know how to fix it. I thought, maybe if I pulled away, you'd fight for us. Fight. I had been fighting for so long. I didn't even know what peace felt like anymore until the moment I stopped. She took a step closer. I was scared. I thought you'd never leave me, no matter what. And when you started to pull back, it terrified me. There it was. Not love. Fear. Not connection. Control. That's when I knew this wasn't about regret. This was about power slipping through her fingers. I still love you, she said. But I didn't hear love. I heard habit. And habits die quietly, especially when the person who used to depend on them decides to stop feeding them. I zipped the suitcase shut. Her eyes darted to it. Are you leaving? No answer. I didn't know her that anymore. I walked past her, not rushing, not cold, just done. Down the stairs, into the kitchen, and grabbed the folder off the counter. The one I'd been building quietly for weeks. Documents. Transfers. Bank closures. Everything laid out. Clean. Final. She followed. Stopped in the doorway, confused. What is that? I handed it to her without a word. She opened it, slowly, like she already knew. And then I watched the truth land on her face in waves. The realization that this wasn't a fight. It was a closing. And she had missed every warning sign until the last page. Her lips parted, but nothing came out. She looked at me the same way she had the first night I walked in with his wife, like she was seeing something she couldn't undo. But this wasn't revenge. It was clarity, and it had taken its final form. I poured a glass of water, sat at the table, calm, because I wanted her to sit in this moment, not with rage, but with reflection. She wasn't losing a man. She was facing the echo of everything she threw away when she thought I'd never walk. And now, the man who used to beg for her love was preparing the silence she would live in for the rest of her life. She cried, not the manipulative kind, not the performative one with silence and side glances. Real tears. Tears that finally came when she realized the performance was over, and there was no audience left. She sat at the edge of the couch, the folder still on her lap, eyes red, hair falling over her face like even her body was trying to hide the shame. I didn't think it would go this far, she said. And maybe she meant it. But that didn't matter anymore. Because this wasn't about what she thought. It was about what she did. Every silence, every withheld touch, every glance at another man while I was standing right there, dying inside, too quiet to beg. I thought I had time, she whispered. They always think that. Because the man who stays quiet becomes background noise. And they mistake his patience for permanence. But silence isn't a lack of action. It's the most dangerous kind. I stood by the window, arms folded, watching her crumble without touching a single thing in the room. Everything around her looked the same. The curtains, the coffee table, the throw blanket we once fought over during movie nights. But nothing felt like it belonged anymore. She looked up, tears streaking down. Do you love me at all? I looked at her, and I remembered. The way she used to laugh. The way she once touched my back in the middle of the night just to feel close. The way I thought I could build a life with her and call it home. But that wasn't who she was anymore. Or maybe, more accurately, that was never who she really was. I said. Simple. Unflinching. She nodded slowly, like she already knew. But knowing it and hearing it are two different kinds of pain. And she was drowning in both. I walked past her, picked up the envelope with the revised deed, the finalized account closures, the notarized statement of separation. Set it gently on the table beside her. She didn't look at it. Because now, she wasn't fighting to stay. She was just trying to delay the goodbye. But the truth was already echoing between us. Not in what we said, but in everything we no longer did. There was no more reaching across the space. No more pretending. No more almosts. Only silence. And silence, once it's chosen, becomes a language you can't unlearn. I didn't need to yell. Didn't need to prove anything. I had already won the moment. I stopped hoping she'd understand. Because now, she understood. And that's exactly what broke her. I left on a Thursday. Not because it meant anything. Not because it was symbolic. But because it was quiet. No weekend drama. No crowd of texts. No last-minute pleas. Just Thursday. A plain, forgettable day for anyone but her. I packed at 5 a.m. Not out of fear. Out of respect. For myself. For the version of me who stayed too long. Who gave too much. Who loved her in all the ways she never understood. The house was still. She was asleep. Or pretending to be. The suitcase rolled lightly across the hallway floor. No slam of the front door. No note on the kitchen counter. I didn't owe her a scene. I owed myself peace. The car was already loaded. New apartment. New lease. New locks. A space that hadn't heard her voice, or her laughter, or the lies she coded in affection. And for the first time in years, I breathed without calculating how it would affect someone else's mood. Freedom didn't feel like fireworks. It felt like silence, real silence. Not the one between two people still pretending, but the kind that happens when one finally stops pretending at all. Later that day, she called. Once. Then again. Then 5 times. No voicemail. Just her name flashing on the screen. I watched it. Let it ring. Then muted it. Because closure isn't a conversation. It's a decision. I got a message that night. Are you really doing this? I didn't answer. Not because I didn't care, but because I no longer cared in a way that kept me stuck. And she knew. Deep down, she knew. The silence was no longer a weapon. It was a door, and I had walked through it. In the weeks that followed, friends reached out. Some neutral, some curious, some pretending they didn't already know. I stayed calm, unbothered, precise. She said you just stopped loving her, one friend said. I smiled. No, I replied. I just started loving myself more. That was the end of it. I didn't tell the full story, didn't list her failures, didn't catalog the nights I went to bed wondering if I was enough. Because the man I am now doesn't look back to prove he was right. He moves forward to make sure he never forgets what wrong feels like. And her? She still lives in that house. Still walks those familiar floors. Still glances at a door that doesn't open anymore. Because in the end, I didn't leave her with revenge. I left her with something louder, something permanent. Silence. The kind that doesn't echo. Because there's no one left to hear it. What would you have done in my place? If the story hit you, leave a like. And don't forget to subscribe. It only gets stronger from here.